A mental hospital lost over 50 patients. Not their files. Not their records. The actual human beings. 50 people, with names, with families, with lives that someone decided didn't matter anymore, simply ceased to exist. No transfer records at the receiving end. No death certificates filed with the state. No graves. No explanations. And then, years later, someone started setting fire to the buildings where they'd lived. One by one, the structures burned to ash. And whatever evidence might have still been hiding inside those walls burned with them. This is the story of Byberry Mental Hospital. And what happened here is worse than anything you've been told. Philadelphia, 1907. The city opens what it calls the Philadelphia Hospital for Mental Diseases on a sprawling rural campus in the Byberry neighborhood of the far northeast. The idea, at least on paper, is progressive. Get mentally ill patients out of the overcrowded city almshouses. Give them fresh air. Open spaces. A chance at recovery. The campus eventually grows to over 200 acres, with more than 50 buildings, dormitories, treatment halls, kitchens, tunnels connecting the structures underground so patients and staff can move between them in winter. At its peak in the 1960s, Byberry houses over 7,000 patients. 7,000 human beings, packed into a facility designed for far fewer. And that's when things begin to rot. By the late 1960s, Byberry is no longer a hospital in any meaningful sense of the word. It's a warehouse. A place where the city sends people it doesn't want to think about, the severely mentally ill, the developmentally disabled, the elderly suffering from dementia, the homeless, the addicted. Once you pass through those doors, you are, for all practical purposes, gone. You have been subtracted from Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is grateful not to do the math. The staff-to-patient ratio, which should never exceed 1:8 in any psychiatric facility, degrades to nightmarish levels. By the mid-1970s, internal memos acknowledge ratios of 1 staff member to 80 patients on certain wards. 1 person. 80 patients. Some of them violent. Some of them catatonic. Some of them children. What happens in a place like that isn't hard to imagine, but it's important that we don't just imagine it, because we have testimony. We have photographs. We have the words of people who were there. In 1967, a conscientious objector named Charlie Lord was assigned to Byberry as an alternative to military service during the Vietnam War. What he saw when he arrived made him physically ill. Patients wandered the halls naked because there weren't enough clothes or staff to dress them. Human waste covered the floors of wards where patients had been left unattended for hours. Lord described men chained to walls with leather restraints that had worn through their skin to the bone. He described patients beating other patients while staff sat in a locked office and did nothing, not because they were cruel, though some were, but because one person cannot control 80 people, and everyone in that building knew it. Lord did something extraordinary. He smuggled a camera inside. And the photographs he took, gaunt, hollow-eyed men sitting in their own filth in rooms that looked more like concrete pens than hospital wards, became some of the earliest documentary evidence of institutional abuse in America. They were published in a 1968 exposé and triggered public outrage. But here is the first thing you need to understand about Byberry. The outrage never lasted. It came in waves, 1968, 1975, 1982, 1987, and each time, the city promised reform. Each time, nothing changed. Because reform costs money. And the people inside Byberry couldn't vote, couldn't organize, couldn't call their congressman. Many of them couldn't speak. They were perfect victims, and the system treated them accordingly. Now here's where the story turns from institutional neglect into something much darker. Between 1970 and 1985, a period of 15 years during which Byberry's conditions were at their absolute worst, patients died. That's not surprising in a facility housing thousands of severely ill people. What is surprising is how many of them died violently. In 1987, a former Byberry worker contacted the Philadelphia Inquirer with internal documents, an audit that had been suppressed. What the audit revealed should have triggered a federal investigation. It didn't. The audit identified at least 4 deaths that were classified as natural but bore evidence of blunt force trauma. It identified 6 instances of sexual assault that were documented by nursing staff but never reported to police. And it identified something far more disturbing than either of those findings. 52 patients who were listed as discharged or transferred between 1970 and 1985 had no corresponding arrival records at any receiving facility. No follow-up documentation. No forwarding addresses. For the majority of them, no death certificates existed anywhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's records. 52 people. Let that number settle into you. These weren't patients who wandered off and were lost in the community, though that happened too. These were patients whose paperwork said they went somewhere specific, another hospital, a group home, a family residence. But when auditors followed the paper trail, it dead-ended. The receiving facilities had no record of them. The family addresses listed didn't exist. The group homes had either never heard of these patients or had closed years before the supposed transfer date. 3 categories of missing patients emerged from the audit. The first, patients transferred to facilities that were real but had no intake records matching the dates or names. The second, patients discharged to addresses that, upon investigation, turned out to be vacant lots, demolished buildings, or in one case, a cemetery. The third, and most chilling, patients whose entire files were incomplete, no photograph, no next of kin, no admission paperwork, only a name, a diagnosis, and a discharge date. As if they were created on paper solely to be erased from it. The leaked audit asked a question that no one in Philadelphia's city government wanted to answer. Where are these people? That question was asked in 1987. It has never been answered. Now, you might be thinking there must be innocent explanations. Clerical errors. Sloppy record-keeping in an overcrowded, underfunded facility. And yes, some of those 52 cases were likely the result of bureaucratic incompetence, a name misspelled, a transfer form misfiled, a patient who died of natural causes whose death certificate was simply never processed because the system was broken. But not all of them. Not even most of them. Because when the Inquirer published portions of the audit in late 1987, something happened. 3 former staff members contacted the paper independently. They didn't know each other. They'd worked at Byberry in different decades. And they described the same thing. They described a practice, informal, never written down, never authorized, of removing patients who had become unmanageable. Patients who were violent. Patients who required more care than the skeleton staff could provide. Patients who, in the cold calculus of an institution running on fumes, cost more to maintain than they were worth. The former staff members couldn't say with certainty what happened to these patients after removal. One believed they were transported to unlicensed boarding houses in North Philadelphia and simply abandoned. One believed some were driven to the edges of the city and released, dumped on rural roads in Bucks County with no identification and no way to communicate who they were or where they'd come from. The third believed something worse. He refused to elaborate on the record. He told the Inquirer reporter, "There are things in those tunnels that nobody ever looked for, because nobody ever wanted to find them." The tunnels. Byberry's underground tunnel system was vast, miles of passageways connecting the campus buildings. After the facility's closure in 1990, urban explorers documented the tunnel network extensively. They found rooms that appeared on no official floor plan. They found locked doors that led to spaces filled with decades of accumulated institutional debris, patient files, restraint devices, medical equipment, clothing. And they found something else that was mentioned repeatedly in exploration reports from the late 1990s but was never formally investigated. In at least 3 separate accounts published on urban exploration forums between 1997 and 2003, explorers described encountering a strong, persistent odor in certain tunnel sections that they could not identify but that several of them, independently, described using the same word, organic. One explorer, a medical student, was more specific. He described the smell as being consistent with advanced decomposition and noted that it was localized to a sealed section of tunnel beneath Building 7, a building that had housed the facility's most severely ill patients. Building 7 burned down in 2001. It was the first of the Byberry structures to be destroyed by arson. Between 2001 and 2006, a series of deliberately set fires gutted most of the remaining buildings on the Byberry campus. The arsons were never solved. The Philadelphia Fire Marshal's office investigated and determined the fires were set by multiple individuals over several years, but no arrests were made. The official position was that the fires were set by vandals, thrill seekers, or homeless individuals using the abandoned buildings for shelter. That explanation might satisfy you. It doesn't satisfy me. Because the pattern of the arsons is deeply strange when you look at it closely. 5 facts about the Byberry fires that have never been adequately explained. First, the fires began in 2001, shortly after the urban exploration community began publishing detailed interior photographs and reports about the tunnel system online. Second, Building 7, the building with the sealed tunnel section and the unexplained smell, was the first to burn. Third, the fires targeted the older buildings on the campus's interior, the ones connected by the tunnel network, while newer peripheral buildings were left untouched. Fourth, accelerants consistent with professional-grade solvents were found at multiple fire sites, not the gasoline or lighter fluid you'd expect from casual vandalism. Fifth, in 2004, a security guard hired to patrol the campus reported seeing a dark-colored sedan with Pennsylvania government plates parked near Building 12 the night before it burned. He filed a report. The report has never been located. The last major structure on the Byberry campus was demolished in 2006. The tunnels were filled with rubble and sealed. The land was sold to a private developer. Today, a residential community sits on the site. Families live there. Children play in yards that are built on top of whatever is left of those tunnels. I want to return to those 52 names. Because there's one more detail from the 1987 audit that rarely gets mentioned when this story is told. The auditors didn't just count the missing patients. They tried to identify them. They compiled a list. And according to the former employee who leaked the audit, that list was included in the original document delivered to city officials. When the Philadelphia Inquirer obtained the audit through their source, the list was not attached. The Inquirer requested it through official channels. The city responded that no such list existed and that the audit itself was a preliminary internal review whose findings were unsubstantiated. The former employee insisted the list was real. He said he had personally seen it. He said it contained names, admission dates, and the dates of last recorded contact for each of the 52 patients. That list has never surfaced. The former employee stopped speaking to the press in 1989. His name has never been made public. What we are left with is this. A hospital that operated for 83 years in one of America's largest cities. Thousands of patients who passed through its doors with no advocate, no voice, and no one on the outside watching. 52 human beings who vanished from the record, not in some remote rural institution, not in some third-world country, but in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States of America, within the lifetimes of people who are still alive today. A tunnel system that urban explorers said smelled like death. A series of arsons that destroyed the buildings and buried the tunnels. And a list of names that someone, somewhere, decided the public should never see. Byberry wasn't a horror movie. It wasn't a creepypasta. It was a place that your government built and your tax dollars funded. And the most terrifying thing about it isn't what happened inside those walls. It's that when someone finally tried to count the cost, tried to add up the human beings who went in and never came out, the answer they got was treated not as a crisis, but as an inconvenience. Something to be filed away. Something to be burned. 52 people. No records. No graves. No answers. What do you think really happened to them? Leave your theory below.